Okay.
It is 5:31 and welcome to the Lake Mills Parks Board October 14th, 2024 meeting. Call to order, roll call. Mike, would you go first, please?
Yes, Mike Newsman present.
Anita Martin here.
Tim Sprecher.
Mary Schmager.
All right, thank you. And it's my understanding McRae Baker is absent tonight with permission.
Mm-hmm.
He did let us know. So moving on to item number 3 on the agenda, we will talk about the Parks Board minutes, review and approve them, and then we will talk about correspondence, including emails, then the Parks and Forestry Director's report, which again is an attachment. You can find online, 6 questions and public comments, and then 7 public comment session for the Mill Pond recreational options and improvements for fulfilling the City Council resolution. I would like to make a note that attendees are welcome to speak. You have 3 minutes. We ask you to sign in, and we ask you to limit your public comments to items regarding recreational options and improvements. What will not be spoken about is the dredging and weed harvesting, because that has already been recommended that those not be done to the City Council. And we also ask you that you follow the agenda as it's listed so that we can make sure that this is recorded properly and people can find it on the websites. Then we will go to number 8 with recommendations for future agendas and then adjournment. So with that, we will go to the Parks Board minutes, review and approval. And that's the one page submitted by Michael Nessman. Anyone have comments or corrections on the Parks Board minutes as presented by Mike?
I would just point out that they were amended to include the motions that you guys had passed at the last meeting. If you look at, right, to include the DNR and Jefferson County representative under the Mill Pond discussion rather than under public comment.
Thank you, Mike. Any other corrections or amendments to the Parks Board meeting minutes?
No, I would move to approve the Parks Board minutes of September 9th, 2024.
All right,
Second that.
all right. All in favor of approval, Mike?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you, Mike. Moving on to the number 4, correspondence, including emails. Anyone have things to bring up?
Mike, do you have anything? No.
No, I have nothing.
I did receive an email from a resident a while back, and I think it was since the meeting, asking if the Parks Board would be having an open information session, a public session pertaining to the Sandy Beach project proposal. So at the City Council meeting, I did bring that forward, the fact that that was shared and that, if that could be done by this body, which would mean that the City Council would need to provide a directive on that, or if it could be done at the City Council level, since there are a lot of questions, and even though it's not an action referendum coming up here, it would be good for people to have more of an opportunity for some input. So that's what he wrote about, and I guess that sort of is a combination of correspondence and public comment, and I apologize if I was out already there.
Thank you, Anita. I had no emails or correspondence. Mary?
I didn't either regarding anything for the Parks Board.
Thank you. Then let's move to item number 5, Parks and Forestry Director's report from Eric Schreiner. Are you ready, Eric?
Yes, sir. There's a couple things I would like to highlight on this first, and then I will be open to questions afterwards. First thing is closure dates for parks closures. We are planning our winterizing of our restrooms, looking like next week for the 21st is when we begin. This is on par with previous years. We do service our restrooms daily, so as soon as we do winterize them, it does free up staff time and availability to do the remainder of our forestry work. This is kind of that in-between time to where we start shutting down our parks, doing winterizing, et cetera. So October 21st is on par with previous years, but we are planning for next week, weather conditions permitting. If it is still nice, we will still have our restrooms open and accessible as long as possible. Let me see here. That does exclude Commons Park and Tyranina Park. Obviously, Tyranina Park is non-waterized. There's no water to Tyranina Park, and Commons Park stays open year-round because it is heated. I have pursued, based on some of our discussions for the mill pond, the directional signage for the mill pond itself. I have excluded that as an option for discussion specifically on this meeting because I am pursuing that with the state DOT to have those signs installed on Highway 89. That doesn't include a right-of-way permit, and I will be having those signs installed in addition to the Tree City USA signs on the north and south sides of the city on Highway 89. I think it's a good idea to at least advertise the fact that we do have recreational opportunities at the mill pond. Upcoming events, we do have Witches Night Out on October 30th and the Historical Cemetery Walk on October 20th. So this week we've had substantial amount of staff this week doing kind of our last final grounds maintenance cleanup at the cemetery in preparation for October 20th. In regards to the bike rack at Bartles Beach, I did have the entire property located for utilities. I know we had discussed finding an easier alternative, or not easier alternative, but what options and what locations could we install this bike rack at based on where the parking stalls are and the utilities within the park. There is really, in my opinion, one viable option for the installation of this bike rack. It would be between the men's restroom area at Bartles and the actual garden bed at Bartles. I did speak with Vicki Whitcliffe, who maintains that bed fantastically. She is aware of the installation. I am open to alternatives if you have any, but it looks like that is the most viable option for the bike rack installation from that donation from Cassandra Frazier. Today, we did start the erosion control efforts and work at Sandy Beach. There was a polymer injection underneath the actual void from the concrete at the boat ramp today. This will be followed by riprap and erosion control installation by city park staff on October 21st. Tyranina Park parking lots will still be striped. This is just the upper parking lot. There will be directional arrows painted at both upper and lower, but there will not be delineated parking stalls at lower Tyranina. Upper Tyranina will have those parking stalls striped by Streets Department yet this year. I did meet with Lang Lighting, who actually provides all of the lighting in Commons Park. The additions that we are going to have there are that area across from the Legion Burger stand, where the historical walking tour signage is, as well as the sign at the intersection of Main Street and Lake Street. The brick columns will be lighted in addition this year as well. For the first time, we have done overseeding within parks, hoping to have a dormant seed take place, so hopefully we have more grass growing in spring. And currently, we are reviewing the athletic field use policy. We did follow the field use policy that was enacted, I believe, in 2006 this season. I think it is time for that field use policy to be reviewed both on a fee schedule as well as an actual overview schedule. So we are going to be presenting a draft policy to Parks Board at the next following meeting. Other than that, I did not touch much on forestry, but the 2024 Tree City USA application has been submitted to the Arboriculture Foundation this year, and it is currently under review. Sorry, that was a lot of words very quickly, but any comments or questions?
I have three questions. One, erosion control. What caused it to fail?
That's hard to say. The first thing I would say is lack of installation of riprap at the initial construction would be my first one. The second one would be higher water levels and wave action at the beach itself this year. So we did notice erosion at the actual boat launch the past few years, but not to the extent that we saw this year. This year was very drastic. Now this work was planned to be done in this off season, but there is a limited time frame to where this work can be completed before it starts freezing. It is work that cannot be done during the normal boating season. The boat ramp is just too busy to actually conduct this work. So we didn't have any residual damages from it, but we did have underwashing to it. If we did not, in my opinion, if we did not address it this fall, I do believe that we would have actual infrastructure damage to the concrete after ice heaves and everything else in the springtime. But we did see substantial amounts of erosion at the boat launch this season.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that same subject?
Yes.
I had a question on that as well. Was this the same subject that, I looked at the Sandy Beach plan, the overall Sandy Beach plan. It talked a lot about water runoff programs, and I understood that there were some runoff gardens that were never put into place after the launch got put in. So is this related to that? Are those gardens separate?
This is separate. So those gardens itself were the ones specifically between the parking lot and Sandy Beach Road.
Okay.
You can actually see two basins that are on the south side of the parking lot. That is separate from here. What I'm speaking is specifically the two areas. We have a dual launch at Sandy Beach. It's each area immediately to the sides of each actual
Okay.
ramp itself.
Okay.
So this would be separate from that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mary. The other one is, when we say Tyranina parking, are we talking upper Tyranina?
Yep.
All right. Then-
Upper is going to be delineated for parking stalls. It was specifically designed to allow one handicap accessible parking stall that will be striped accordingly. And we did design the parking lot to, one, have as small of an impervious surface as possible, but still allow maximum amount of parking. So it will be striped accordingly to fit that.
And then the third is the grass overseeding. Are we doing any that, or rototilling, not rototilling, what's the word I want?
plugs.
Aerating.
Aerating.
Aerating?
Aerating, yes.
All right,
Yes,
so-
so we did purchase a drop seeder. That was one of my wants, I suppose, is to improve the surface of our athletic outfields. I do believe that aerating, overseeding, and cultivating is one of the best aspects to do that, to actually get a thick turf on the outside of our athletic fields. And I have seen positive results from that. This is the first time that we have ample time to actually do it in the parks themselves. So this actual attachment for our tractors is, one, both an aerator, two, a drop seeder, and three, a cultipacker. I'm certainly hoping that we have positive results in spring, but this is in lieu, if you recall, the decision that we had doing broadleaf herbicide treatments within the parks. What we're trying to do is eliminate the use of broadleaf herbicides in favor of thatching, aerating, and overseeding within our parks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the report?
If you could just repeat, I did not hear everything again because I, can't hear always very well, but you were mentioning a 2006 policy that you feel ought to be revisited, and I didn't catch what that was in regards
So this
to.
is athletic field use policy. What this specifically is last year we did look at the fee schedule for people to rent and have city park staff prepare a ball diamond for play. So that includes grooming, maintaining, raking, and striping of these actual infields. And there is a fee associated with that, and that was decided last year at the Parks Board level. However, the actual field use policy has a prioritization of who gets the booking priority when it comes to the actual calendar year. We did enact the existing or enforce the existing policy this year, and we noticed some inefficiencies in it, some deficiencies with it, potential for review with it. There are changing user groups in our athletic fields. We have a lot more league teams within the city, but we still want to provide open and accessible fields to the general public and the actual school districts themselves. So what we're trying to do is take all of the user groups for our athletic field use policy, see what was previously enacted, and try to make the best possible outcome for that athletic field use policy. So we're drafting it currently, and issues that we experienced this summer, basically, like hardships between certain groups. Some groups are favored, like as per the policy, and sorts of others. We're trying to make it as even as possible or as equal as possible. So we're reviewing it right now and drafting. I would require that to actually come to the Parks Board level in favor of passing prior to 2025 so we can begin booking some of these league teams. Yep, so that'll be an upcoming topic, I believe, for the November Parks Board.
A couple of questions, Eric. First, were there any surprises in the tree removals, like any really big tree or something that you were, not really?
Not necessarily. It's generally, we do stick heavily to dead, diseased, or dying trees.
Okay.
A lot of the trees that we removed this season were approximately 6-inch DBH trees, so not very large, but we didn't necessarily see a specific species that was doing poorly. I do believe that it was a result of the past couple of years of subsequent droughts that we're seeing a lot of dieback on some of these trees. And it was approximately, I think it was 34 trees that we removed this season, but it was substantial notice of this tree is dead standing that was removed.
Are you prophylactically removing ash trees?
They have all been removed.
They've all already gone?
Yep.
Then the
Almost
other-
all have been removed. Anything within the terraces, right-of-ways, or parks have already been removed. Interior areas, I'm specifically referencing to the forested area in Wallace and the forested area in Tyranina Parks. Unless they possess like a safety risk or hazard, they do stay for the aspect of actual habitat development. But all ash trees have since been removed within the city.
Have you seen much oak wilt?
We have not received an additional confirmed test of oak wilt. However, we have not collected samples for additional oak wilt tests, but we haven't seen all that much dieback within oaks themselves,
Okay.
which is good.
Could we see the spring planting list, or is that available?
Yeah, we can do that. That is tentative. So normally what happens is we do develop our planting list approximately 8 months in advance.
Okay.
That is specifically for planting locations is the first thing we develop. We know those as far in advance as possible. The next thing is what tree fits this actual terrace width or et cetera. What species is the most applicable for the soil conditions. And then the final one is species availability for the nursery is kind of the last one. There may have been a dieback on a certain species over this overwintering period, et cetera. So we'll know our final planting list with those exact species by late winter of next year, but we do have our tentative planting list for next year already developed, and that can be shared.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
And I have
Yes.
questions. Question about the planning for the Bartles Beach seawall.
Yeah.
I know there was expressed interest in a discussion while the seawall was being repaired, I guess, to look at ways to mitigate sand movement into the Mill Pond Channel there.
Yep.
And I was curious if that was going to be in scope to look at, and I don't know what the solutions could be or would be. Is that in scope for that discussion?
Yep.
Okay.
So I did meet with this was back in early spring of this year. It was both Jefferson County Land and Water Conservation Department, Wisconsin DNR, and it's surprising that Department of Agriculture
Okay.
actually has oversight for some of these projects, which was surprising to me. But we did have all representatives there, and we were all trying to come up to a mutual understanding. We have multiple different options that could work. We don't necessarily know if they're going to work, but at this stage right now, we are starting with engineering and design. And then at that aspect, we can critique that engineering design to see what aspects can mitigate the sand. But
Okay.
it is a point of discussion for the design of the additional seawall repairs.
Great. Good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
And then my last question is, I don't know if this falls in your area of purview, but I know
try.
the city council earlier this year approved for a study in Marsh Lake as they're looking at the water level possibilities for discussion. And I'm curious to know if you have an update on that?
Marsh Lake would be beyond my scope.
That would be beyond
Yep.
yours. Okay, I didn't know if you would have connectivity given your role. So thank you. I'll look elsewhere.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, which is questions and public comment that are not related to the mill pond options or improvements. So are there any questions or public comments at this time? Hearing none, we will move on to item number 7, public comment regarding the recreational options and improvements for fulfilling the city council resolution. And it appears we have 2 present presenters and 1 online. Is that Abigail Levens?
She is with the leader, so she is attending this meeting, hoping to do at least provide some input or after action report from her article that she wrote a couple weeks
All
ago.
right, so thank you. So at this point, you're welcome to speak, and you have 3 minutes to make your comments and include your whys or such. The order of, we're talking about fishing piers, and we're talking about the boardwalk. We'll talk about non-motorized watercraft launch and/or pier, educational, environmental, and historical signage to be added, short-term and/or long-term kayak storage, and then the self-service kayak paddleboard rental station. If one of those are not part of the your comment, after those 7 items or 6 items go through, then you're welcome to add those. So if we have someone that wants to speak on the fishing piers. No one? Then next one is the boardwalk. Number 3, non-motorized watercraft launch pier. None. Educational, environmental, and or historical signage. All right. And now we will go to the short-term and or long-term kayak storage. All right, Jeff? Please, yes, please go up to the microphone. I know you've already signed in. But if you would state your name and your address.
Get this up where I am. Hello. My name is Jeff Johns. I live on 508 Dodge Court on the west side of Ferry Street.
I'm sorry, how do you spell your last name?
Johns, Johns. So I moved to Lake Mills back in December of last year, and I came from the other side of Johnson Creek. I lived over there. I was a county board supervisor for 5 years, in charge of District 11 over that way in Farmington. I was on the Parks Department board committee for all those 5 years, and worked with Kevin Weissman, and I think I met Eric once or twice during that period of time. So I moved over here, and we live just a couple, 3 blocks off of the lake and 4 or 5 blocks from downtown. But my wife and I are kayakers, and we like to be on the water as much as we can, and when the water is right and the temperature is right and the wind is right, we like to go. So, but currently, getting the kayaks down that hill and over to where we can get them in the water is we have to transport those kayaks from point A to point B, whether it be Bartles Beach down that way or Sandy Beach on the other end of the lake, but that's where we have to go. So in speaking with Eric a few years ago, or about a few months back, I was talking about this, and here's a couple of the things that I brought up. This problem for a lot of people in Lake Mills, including myself, is the storing of kayaks, canoes, paddleboards in yards or garage spaces behind their homes. Because if you want to use those crafts, you have to transport them to the water. And what we're trying to do, I think, in this town is increase the value of living close to Rock Lake. So transportation becomes an issue. Even if you're only going 6 blocks, you still have to transport. You still have to load it up, drive 6 blocks, unload. Yes?
You have 1 minute.
Pardon?
You have 1 minute.
Okay, sorry. So in spending some time around Mill Pond, I found the access road behind the fire department, which is not being used for much of anything. And so the idea is to put permanent racks up on that access road behind the fire department along the lake, along Mill Pond, and have people be able to rent space on those racks on an either seasonal basis or an annual basis, and leave them there at their responsibility to cable or rope those things on there, so that the city would have no liability with theft or anything like that. And so with the fees that the city would be able to, or the Parks Department would be able to collect from these rentals, would pay for those racks. And so from the racks where they would be to the launch is maybe 200 feet, maybe 300 feet. Very simple for anybody with a kayak or a canoe to walk down and launch and go. So that's my proposal. That's the thought, is to have permanent racks down there made out of either wood or aluminum. There's different kinds. And for the cost of making those racks and putting them down there, the rentals would pay for that in at least 1 or 2 years. And so that's the idea.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
And if I could
Any
ask you, is that something you can maybe, those details or options or maybe examples, is that something you can get to Eric?
Yes, I think Aaron and I are both, we're familiar with these things. I did go and take some pictures from different racks that I've seen in the last 24 hours. And so there's a lot of different kinds you can get.
Yes.
So, but I think that the people of Lake Mills would really like it. And people that I've talked to thought it was great.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very much, Jeff.
you bet.
So any other comments on the short-term or long-term kayak storage? Yes, Eric.
Yes, if I may, Tim, this is a service that the city currently offers. This is something that we have currently at Sandy Beach. We have 2 seasonal storage racks at Sandy Beach that allow up to, I believe it's 8 kayaks per rack, and we have 2 racks. So we do have a seasonal rental agreement for these. That seasonal rental agreement goes from April 1st to October 1st. These racks stay permanently at Sandy Beach. This allows the person to drive to Sandy Beach. They don't have to transport their watercraft. They are responsible for the locking of their watercraft. We just provide a storage opportunity for them, is what the city does. And this resident or renter does get charged for that. So we do have an existing lease for that. They are consistently filled each year on an annual basis at Sandy Beach. I'm not quite sure if there's a wait list on those, but they are consistently used and filled. I do think that there are different designs or different prices of kayak storage options that range anywhere from homemade, like Jeff was saying, to a couple $100 that's sustainable and can stay outside forever. And then the actual person who's on this rental agreement would be responsible for their own personal watercraft. So I just do want to reiterate that this is something the city does currently offer, just at a different property.
Thank you. We will move on to sub-item 6, which is self-service kayak paddleboard rental station. Do we have anyone commenting on this? All right. If not, then, I'm sorry, Eric.
I will say this is another service that the city offers since 2022. Currently, Surf Shack Rentals is an annual contractor or service at Sandy Beach. They would be interested in having an additional rental opportunity in Lake Mills. The one at Sandy Beach is one of the most profitable locations for this business itself. I've heard very positive comments regarding it. There would be available opportunities or storage locations for this actual business to operate at the Mill Pond, and I have had generally positive public interest on self-service kayak rentals.
Eric, where would they store, so these people would rent kayaks where are you thinking about storing it at the Mill Pond, roughly?
I was looking at it, the curb space, or I suppose kind of pseudo terrace space, which would be on the north side of Veterans Lane. That's that grassy strip between the actual pavement and the Mill Pond. Isn't really a great location for it. I believe the best location most likely would be on the south side of the entrance sign, or where the pay box is. That would take up some potential parking space at the Mill Pond. However, these storage locations for Surf Shack rentals really aren't that large. They're about vehicle width, if not smaller. But I think that would be the most accessible location for them just because it's flat and there's enough room to navigate around a station down there. I'm not quite sure. I'm just saying I have had public comments expressing their interest on this opportunity, and the business owner themselves has expressed interest that Lake Mills is profitable for them, which in my mind, I'm not necessarily concerned about the profits. I'm concerned about the recreational opportunities on this. We do collect a, I suppose, fee from the actual business operator for the service, so it is a profit gaining opportunity for the city, but it is most, I suppose, in this aspect, a recreational opportunity for people.
And how does that work? So that they would they have to have a person stationed there, or there's some sort of,
Nope, it's all remotely accessed. So how it is you, I would say please try if you can. The Surf Shack rentals down at Sandy Beach, it's very user friendly. There are PFDs available. You basically scan the station itself. It provides you directions. It provides you a code to unlock, and it also corrects payment. So it's entirely self-service.
too modern.
Eric, on the placement, is there thought to possibly having it off of Ferry Drive so that you're not having a conflict with boaters that want to park after they've launched, and then not having conflict between non-motorized and motorized?
That would be an option. I would say Bartles Beach was a second option that was discussed for this actual business owner. They saw an opportunity to expand down there. They saw a recreational opportunity, which I do too, but it would be on the Mill Pond side specifically. I do not want to encourage people to launch off of the actual Bartles Beach side.
Yes.
I would like to delineate access to the Mill Pond side and then access through Rock Lake. I do think Ferry Drive could be an alternative for that. I think there's ample space to also have a station there. I think it ultimately comes down to watercraft access to the water. Right now, there's currently not a fantastic spot to put in on the south, or I suppose, correct me, the east side. Yep, east side of Ferry Drive. There's not really a great spot to launch a watercraft there. But it's another option that could be researched. I would say I just wouldn't encourage people to launch off of the Bartles Beach side.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. I want to make sure we don't have conflicts between parking space, because that is a premium. And so, all right, so thank you. Well, let's move to opening this up for discussion again, specifically to the Mill Pond ideas. If there are people that are going to speak on that, please. Yes, right here. Just please state your name and address, please, and your topic. And you might need, yes, thank you. About 6
I
inches.
will.
There you are. Perfect. Thank you.
Karen Etter Hale, 517 Tower Street. I've been walking through the Mill Pond Woods for probably 60 years or more, and I've done weekly bird surveys there, probably a couple hundred of those minimum. And I just want to mention that, in case you don't know, there's at least 165 species of birds that have been documented there. I don't have an exact list, but I know that for sure, including 28 different warbler species, among others. And I can get that information to anybody who wants it, at least in part. I also have done frog counts, the DNR frog and toad survey there, starting in 1983, so it's been over 40 years. And I want to make sure you know there are bullfrogs in the Mill Pond, which is a protected species in Jefferson County. I think it's the only county that has it as a protected species. And that's really important because bullfrogs need permanent water. They have 2 years as tadpoles, so they need permanent water, and they need some protection from all the predators that go after them. I would say that the birds and the mammals and the toads and the frogs all think that the Mill Pond is pretty well utilized. Pretty much, I would say leave things as much as possible alone, leave the snags. I'm thinking about the woods around the mill pond more than the mill pond itself, but leave some habitat for the bullfrogs especially, except for invasive species. And there's several in there. I know Mike knows about the garlic mustard, which you spent many years pulling there, and many of us have. There's a lot of European buckthorn in there, which is a problem. Mostly I'd like hands off, just leave that special place. It's a quiet walk through there. But I also noticed, I walked through yesterday morning, and there's a lot of Japanese knotweed on the east side, and I'd never seen that there at all before. Maybe I missed it, but it's blooming right now, so it's very obvious. It's on the dike on the east side, walk around back of the fire station. So that's a big concern because that's really hard to get rid of. So I just wanted to alert you to that, and I can, if needed, provide you with more details.
Thank you, Karen. I just have a quick question for you. Is this something?
Mike.
I have a quick question for you, Karen. Is this something that, is there an ask here for us to put signage on the walk as to the fact that about the bullfrogs or the warblers or such, so people know what a precious resource that walk is?
Well, it's possible. I hadn't really thought about that. I think quite a few people go through there, and if you're paying attention over years, many of us have totaled up all of these species of birds. It's really important for migration because it's natural, and we've lost so much. So much has been compromised. A lot of the trees have been taken down on the west side of that woods path, and the whole hill. One past homeowner, took down the entire hill and all the trees. So we've lost habitat there, and maybe, for the bullfrogs, it might be important, to say something. There's a lot of other frog species there as well, but that one really stands out. It's one of the best places I know in the county to find bullfrogs.
Thank you for presenting.
I just add something to that, and I think there are many interested groups in the city who want recreational opportunities, the bikers, the boaters, the whatever. And I know when there was this brouhaha over the mountain bike path out at Tyranina, but there's a group of people, largely older, who like a little peace and quiet, a place where they can go and see spring ephemerals, actually hear the birds. And I think, I realize that that's sort of a exclusionary group, because if it's quiet, then perforce there is nobody else. But I think it would be good to keep that in mind sometimes.
Yeah, we don't have too many of those places left in Lake Mills, really. So to me, that's what I like to do. So, and I think there's quite a few of us out there.
Older all the time.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Well, yes, I think that's also what we're trying to do as a Parks Board, is to talk about preserving and or increasing the use and diversity of the uses around the mill pond. So flora, fauna, all those sorts of things are important. So thank you for presenting, and also for adding opportunities for a variety of people. And so thank you very much for your attendance. If there are no other questions or comments, we will go to the next agenda item, which is recommendations for future agendas. And I'll, if I may, ask Eric if there's anything that you have specific that you'd like to see on a future agenda.
Yes, please. I would like Parks Board review and discussion decision. I would like this to be an actual decision item for review of the athletic field use policy. This is somewhat time sensitive, as I would like to have a confirmed athletic field use policy so we can have these athletic teams start booking these fields for the 2025 season.
Okay, we can certainly add that. Any other agenda items? Mike?
I look to your guidance on this. A very significant topic now is wakeboarding, surfing on the lake, and there's lots of controversy, but there's lots of concerns about its effect on the lake. I know that the JRLC is having a meeting, I think, in 2 weeks on that. I don't know if that is anywhere within our purview for us to discuss or weigh in. Eric?
I regularly attend Joint Rock Lake Committee meetings. Anything on the lake itself is within the actual town's discretion. So Joint Rock Lake is specifically designed to have town representatives as well as city representatives. As of this point, since the city does not have discretion on the actual water body itself of Rock Lake, we as a board would not have authority to basically enact the actual wake boating ordinances or anything like that. We don't have any lake ordinances within the city. Now, if it comes down to actual town enforcement or changing of these ordinances, we may have to enact those because we do have watercraft access points within the city, but I do believe it would be beyond the scope of the Parks Board.
I get that we don't have legislative ability, if you will, but do we have standing, if you will, that we should weigh in on this at all, or is this something we leave to them?
You could.
Well, and that's interesting that you're bringing that up, only because I just thought of it when you mentioned, Mike, that the comment about additional, like higher wake or waves this year for some reason. If there is impact to our parks as a result of something, would we not want to have a discussion regarding input anyway? Not that we have governing or decision-making authority, but if there's impact to the parks, either to Bartles or to Sandy Beach or to Tyranina, I think that the lake surface rules or governance would be of interest if we have input or a viewpoint to feed into JRLC, I guess, or for Eric to represent.
Yep, I would agree with you, Mary. If it's our infrastructure that's being impacted by additional wake on the lake itself, so city infrastructure, we could use the Bartles Beach seawall, like you said, Tyranina. Let's use the Sandy Beach boat launch. I suppose it could be. The issue that I see is potentially complicating that. Was this specifically caused by wake-enhanced technology? I'm not quite sure. Doesn't warrant a discussion with Joint Rock Lake? Perhaps.
I want to go back to just to the purpose of this board, and is it beyond our scope, or is that something that goes to Eric and to the city council to make their concerns known? Because that's already, the damage is done, and it'd be a matter of finding out what caused it or what might cause more damage. And would that be something that you would know or the DNR would know? And
my concern is it confirmed to be from wake enhanced technology? Would be my difficulty to determine that. I don't know, would be my thought. I am at least a liaison or spokesperson for the city parks who does attend these meetings. I will continue to do that on a monthly basis. I can absolutely bring up the fact that we have had additional erosion damages at Sandy Beach. Like I said, is this confirmed from wake enhanced technology? I'm not quite sure, but I will continue to be a spokesperson for the city at these Joint Rock Lake Committee meetings. If there's anything that the board requests of me to bring up to Joint Rock Lake, I can absolutely do that.
so if I'm hearing correctly, we can add this as an agenda item, as discussion, to see what we want to do going forward, how much we want to be involved, or what, if we want to do a recommendation to the city council to pursue this as a comment or an interaction with the
City council or Joint Rock Lake would be my question. Yeah, I would say perhaps this is something that you have as a discussion item as a board to bring to Joint Rock Lake. I think that would be the correct avenue. Therefore, Joint Rock Lake would bring the issue to city council.
I see, okay. Does that get to what you were looking for?
Right, so
Mike?
then we would discuss it amongst ourselves and decide if we wanted to bring up an issue because it's significant.
And this is very similar to, I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but Joint Rock Lake did request an update from the Parks Board. So the Parks Board was tasked by the City Council to review the mill pond. Joint Rock Lake did ask Parks Board to provide an update as far as what you have all been working on. Mike actually performed that update. I would say this would be very similar to that aspect. It's board for board or board for commission. So if you would like to provide some input or additional discussion, I would say that discussion would then go to Joint Rock Lake.
All right, thank you.
Great, so if we could put it on as an agenda item to discuss, that'd be great, I think.
Yes.
But it's up to you guys.
One of my suggestions is perhaps we do the same thing that Joint Rock Lake did. They requested an input or update from a Parks Board representative. Perhaps a suggestion would be, do we have a Joint Rock Lake representative present to Parks Board to give you an update on what their discussions have been thus far on wake enhanced technology would be my recommendation.
That's a good idea.
That's an excellent idea. Is that something that you would ask them to consider?
Sure. I would just need to know the scope of the topic. Are you looking specifically for what Joint Rock Lake has been discussing thus far on wake enhanced technology and potential impacts on Rock Lake, or what that committee has been doing as far as action items? What is it that you guys would like to be informed on?
I guess what I would ask us then is to look at their website and see what's going on, and then bring that to the next meeting to discuss, and then we can create our ask to them. That'd
Sure.
be a bit more specific. Then they can come in and respond.
I would like to remind you, it would have to be kind of focused on city infrastructure or potential impacts to the city itself.
Be what, Eric?
We're not saying the actual surface of or lake bed, that would be within the town's purview. I do want to make sure that we focus this in onto actual city infrastructure.
No, I think Mary brought up a very good point. That's how we could ask that.
Parks.
How is it affecting Lower Tyranina? How is it affecting Bartles Beach? How is it affecting Sandy Beach? And maybe access points. So thank you for that. Any other recommendations for future agendas? Yes, Mary?
I am thinking we need to have a follow-up conversation on these multitude of ideas that we have about what we can do in the mill pond, to come up with a formal game plan for what we might want to entertain and price out and map out and draw out, and because I think all of these have merit and are interesting, and we got some input tonight, which was great. But I think that should be on a future agenda.
And I don't know if Abigail could maybe put that in her article, that we'd like to either get more comment to some of these different things, because maybe by an article, we might get more calls or input, because I myself was a little surprised that we didn't have more people talking about either the fishing piers or the boardwalk and such, because to me, those are fairly high-ticket items that we'd be an outlay, versus some of these other ones are either money makers or not much cost. So I think that's an excellent point, Mary.
I just have, I know we don't have a lot of input. I have just, since I go by Bartles Beach anyway, in Mill Pond multiple times a day because of where I live, have just been observing, and so I'm going by anecdotal data, so I'm not counting the people. So I have some personal viewpoints based on what I've observed, and I'm sure we all have, Mike. I know you live in the general area of Bartles Beach as well, and then, being on the Parks Board for a long tenure, Tim, and, Nita just joining, but I would love to gather data, but in the spirit of trying to make sure that we have a proposal so that we get in the right spot early enough for the budget for the right time for, I guess it would be for 25 into 26 now for funding. I would just want to make sure that we don't lose an opportunity and that we do our best with what we have. Because as an example, I already had shared, I see people fishing off of the bridge, the pedestrian path on Ferry all the time, leaning over. And so fishing seems very popular. A lot of kids on their bikes go down there with fishing poles, and they're running across. And so I think fishing pier is intriguing to me, because I see it and I feel like that would be of interest, although we don't have public folks here commenting on it. But I think if we can just bring our observations and weigh, like some of these just might be really, like, I think Boardwalk is a cool idea, but that might just be too grand and too grandiose and a want, not a need. Fishing might be more of a need because I see a lot more people out there with pools, as an example. But I think just trying to get more input, I love, but I think I'd just like to continue to just put something on paper and go.
And with that sort of ask, Eric, are you able, or will you be able by maybe the next meeting to come up with some costs and options regarding fishing piers, the boardwalk?
Let me
Yes,
clarify
all
or
of it.
ask the question then. So the way that I see it is you are provided two options or two potential options for the kayak access or actual kayak pier, I believe a couple meetings ago. I see that as kind of a multi-use infrastructure. I would like to say that you can still fish off of that pier being installed, so I kind of see them as one of the same. It's not just a one type of recreation infrastructure. You can fish off it, you can birdwatch off it, you can also launch your kayak off it. So I see some of these actually being together as far as recreational opportunities. So with that being said, I would say the non-motorized watercraft launch and the fishing piers would be one and the same.
Okay.
Boardwalk has not been priced out yet, nor has educational or environmental historical signage. However, the short-term and or long-term kayak storage, I can provide you what Sandy Beach provides in revenue each year for rental fees, and then I can also provide you the potential cost for a kayak rack. That's very easy to do. The next is the actual self-service kayak rental station. Very easy to do. Again, we have an existing lease structure with a business who is already in service with the city, and I can provide you that information. But I would like to say that the only ones that I have not priced out would be Boardwalk and educational historical signage. That one I see probably being the most difficult to do. There's a huge range that you can do for historical signage. Like I said, I helped develop the ones at Aslan State Park, which were very in-depth, very expensive, but very developed educational signage, or they're very simple pre-existing ones that can be installed as well. So it kind of depends on what we want to go. Boardwalk could be priced out, but it could be priced out the same way that I have the kind of linking together sections or floating sections of the pier that the kayak pier is made out of. I could probably do that, I think.
Well, and I think that would be appreciated. I just also wonder if we put something out there and say this is a cost, and maybe ask if there's a donation, a group that would like to donate to the signage, especially if you can come up with example of Aztalan and get an idea of price, because there are people out there that I believe that would be willing to step up for a project such as that.
Which is fantastic. I would say I would be very much in favor of having site-specific educational signage. When I used to manage all of these boat launches, we had very cut and dry or cookie cutter signage that say, don't mow, let it grow, and why do we allow the shoreline to vegetate as much as it does? Why don't we mow it down? Well, it's because of shoreline erosion control, because of actual species retention, etc. However, the mill pond is environmentally sensitive. One of our speakers tonight posed all of the bird species and all of the frog species that are here. Perhaps we do something that's more site-specific, however, that does accrue additional cost and research. And that's a very hard thing to estimate, I think, because of the variables that are there. But I do think that there would be more recreational benefit, especially if people want to learn about why this thing in our hometown is important and does have, unique species potentially. But that's kind of a hard thing to gauge price on.
I would ask, though, I do think it's important, and I think that if we can make it site-specific, I think it has more resonance for the residents and users. And I do believe that if you could give us a fairly good idea of what it would cost, as example, to Aztalan, just a rough idea, and that would, at least we could pursue it.
The cost that I see is one, installation. That's fine, that could be estimated. The next is the actual materials that are involved. Normally, these are, let's use the story walk, for example, at Wallace Park. This would be very similar to that structure. So it would be potentially a 4x4 post mounted with an angled sign bracket to which you can install whatever signage or whatever information you would like to do. The biggest variable is how many and at what, I suppose, design costs do you have associated with it. The more complicated signage you have, or the more custom-made signage you have, the more cost you have for it. What I can provide is the sign brackets, installation, and material costs is what I can provide. But if you have 4 signs versus 12 signs, there's a pretty substantial price difference.
I think, though, if we have those facts, we can at least pursue some more information, so very much appreciated. Any other questions, comments?
2 others. One is, are we going to set up a Parks Board a class expedition, or if you will, to see the facilities that you have out there?
Yes, I would like to continue doing that. I will say it will not be in the month of October.
No, I figure you're
Yep.
busy.
That I can say, it will not be in the month of October. November, I think we could potentially schedule something, but that would be right at the transition point to when we're doing our parks shutdowns and grounds maintenance to Forestry. I would say most likely November, early November. If not early November, it would have to be December.
No, that'd be fine. I'm just thinking the field trip to the inside.
I will say
facility.
I would like to prioritize a Parks Board introduction and tour in 2024.
Okay.
Let me say that.
2025 or 2024?
4.
24.
I would like to do it this year yet.
Okay.
With the intent of that, I would love for you to meet the staff, see what it is that we do, see the equipment that we use, see some potential processes. That would be kind of the extent of a tour.
So we can add that as maybe potential dates on,
Sure.
at the November meeting.
The other issue, I don't mean to be a pest on this, is I'm always concerned to see the motorized vessels coming ashore on just to the north of the swimming area. And since we may be having a JRLC rep here, there's sort of an interface there. We control the land, they control the water, and I'd be interested in talking to them as how they see that. And I think, as I told you, I've seen people pulling inner tubes right off that beach, and I have video of them drifting into the lines that delineate that swimming. I also have videos of people swimming under those lines. So it's just a continued issue, it seems to me, whereas you have the south side of the swimming area, very few people swim down there, and they could easily get in the water and come up and use the bathrooms. But anyway, I'd like to look at that one time. I know, Tim, I think I bugged you with this several years ago at a meeting. I don't know what came of that, but
I would say that Parks Board would have discretion as far as the access onto Bartles Beach.
this should be coming
can
from the
confirm.
water, you know,
Yep.
where they're coming in, but it is on land. And
I would say that that would be within the purview of Parks Board, is anything accessing Bartles Beach itself would be within your discretion.
And just for logistics, that's between what the old Marley's
right.
and the beach itself is where you're speaking of.
Right, that's the congested area, and kayakers go through and everybody else. And what I'm wondering, though, is why we get the GRLC involved, is because I can see if we said, all right, no motorized boats up on the beach, which would be great, I'd be all for that, but I can just see them coming in 5 feet short, which is what I see now, and that still covers 2/3 of that swimming area, so that I would like to get some buy-in, or at least the viewpoint of the GRLC on that. And also the Parks Board, see if we really want to take this up. I do think it's an issue waiting for a problem.
And I know that we did talk about that as being part of the design of the future seawall and access to the channel and all that. So that might be coming forward because of the things that you brought up, Mike. So, yeah, we could bring that up and put that on an agenda as to seawall design or futures or something like that. If that's
I would say that the seawall design is limited to the south end of the beach, to the opening of the mill pond. It would not include the area on the north side, which is between the actual old bait house or not bait house, but boathouse.
But that's
which is
what we
you're
want, is
referring
to channel them to the south side, away from
Oh,
that north
okay.
channel between Manly's and Bartles. That's, to me, the danger zone.
Yes, yep. So the seawall repair would not encompass that area.
No, but I think what we're going at is we want to make sure that that is not happening on the north side of the beach between the beach and Manly's or whatever it was.
It's
called.
part of an overall thing. Not only do we say you can't land here, but, but you can go there.
Right.
And that would be fine.
All right, so thank you. Any other questions, comments? It's not on here, but I believe, I don't have my calendar right in front of you, I believe our next meeting is November 11th at 5:30.
Yes.
And is there any conflict with it being is that Veterans Day or?
That is Veterans Day, but there will be no conflict in holding a public meeting.
Okay, all right, so we will plan on the meeting here on the 11th of November. Oh, wait,
I do apologize, Tim. There's one thing that passed my mind. Chief Schroeder of our police department would like to give a after-season report of our community service officer program. I would like to specifically make that a presentation open to questions from the board at our next meeting. So
at the
November
next
11th.
meeting you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
November 11th, we'll have that as an agenda item. He will be presenting what our community service officers do. This is the first full-time year that they have been acted within our parks, what kind of enforcement they do, what are some frequent violations that they enforce, and be available for questions, but that will be November 11th.
All right, thank you.
Would we want to publicize that? I'm just thinking, we've all received some emails from people concerned about activities on the beach, et cetera. Or are you trying to limit it more to just a report on the CSOs?
It is specifically to the community service officer program. However, you could advertise it saying this is what our police department currently does. This is what we have experienced in the past, or at least within this first year. This is a trial that we have done this year. We do not have past data on community service officer programs. This is the first year we've had them. Perhaps there could be an opportunity for input for future years for community service and officer involvement, but it's mostly a after-season report of the program itself that he would like to present to the Parks Board.
I would think that what Mike asked is a good ask. I would want to make sure that Chief Schroeder would be okay if there was going to be people asking questions. So at this point, I would say if he could make the presentation, and then if there are any questions that come from that, we could add that to another meeting, because I just don't want him to, it's a him.
Get ambushed.
Yeah, well, not so much ambush, but it not be prepared. So if he presents, that might prompt questions, and then people could ask those questions, and we can move forward. So I guess what I would rather is he come and make the presentation, then if we have questions or other asks, we could ask him. If that.
Sure, I can clarify with him as well, but the
Yeah.
intent is
And
more of
if he
a,
has another idea or would prefer something else, we can certainly
okay.
relay it to you, and we could put that on the agenda.
So if I can clarify, there will be a presentation at the next meeting from Chief Schroeder. There will be discussion decision on the athletic field use policy that is anticipated. We are reviewing the current draft. I am hoping that it will be available to Parks Board for the November 11th meeting. Would we like to move forward with the Joint Rock Lake representative or Joint Rock Lake Committee representative presenting as well, or how would we like to structure that for the next agenda?
No, I think presenting at the next meeting would be
Up to
very
date
good.
as far as
Yes.
what has been done with Wake Enhanced Technology? Okay.
Yes. So anything else? Yes, Anita.
I did have one question. I believe that I read that the ad hoc committee on the trees was going to be addressing, I don't know if it was the role or the interaction with the Parks Board. Was I correct on that?
I'm glad you brought that up, Anita. So the ad hoc committee is currently overviewing Chapter 594, which is the city ordinance section for trees. Within that section, the Parks Board does have discretion to offer suggestions, comments, or anything regarding the actual trees within our park system. The ad hoc committee does not have discretion to do anything. That is specifically the Parks Board recommendation authority behind that. What the tree committee would like to do is present their findings, their recommendations for reviewing Chapter 594, and at least present to Parks Board how your involvement would collaborate with the tree committee itself.
So would that be something for the next meeting agenda, or?
That I'm not quite sure. It is dependent on the next meeting for the actual ad hoc tree committee.
Okay, thank you.
If it does come up in time for the November 11th meeting, I will see that it's added to the agenda and you are informed, but it does depend on the progress that they make on their review of Chapter 594.
Okay, thank you.
So that, though, would be an ask, and if it's not on the November meeting, it could be on the December meeting.
Correct. And to what extent, I'm not quite sure. Like I said, it does depend on the tree committee
Yes,
action.
yes. Thank you for asking, Anita. So if no other recommendations for future agendas, we'd like to thank our presenters for being here and participating. And I will say we are adjourned at 6:36.